Good afternoon, everyone. This time it's July 5th, 2016, 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors to order. And at this time, we'll have the invocation done by Father Guy Usher. If he can step forward, please. Everybody stand.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this county of St. Croix the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. And may the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon all of you now and forever. Amen.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, we'll have roll call, Amy. So.
Ryan.
Scott, Agnes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Everyone is present, so we'll move forward. At this time, we'll open up for public comment on or off the agenda. And all I can say is if we can keep it to 3 minutes or under, I'd appreciate it. So the first one I have up here is Kim Dupree.
Thank you very much for accommodating me tonight. My name is Kim Dupre. I live in Emerald Township, and I'm here tonight as a resident of Emerald Township. I currently live about 1.5 miles away from Emerald Dairy, which over the past few years has been about 1,600 cows, and now they're looking to expand that to over 6,000 cows. And we have a need in Emerald Township, a need for clean, abundant drinking water. But we have this new threat now with the dairy that would expand to such a size. It would have to process 80 million gallons of sewage every year, which equates to the population of a city of 1.4 million people. And just for comparison, that's like Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Milwaukee combined. That many people in one spot in Emerald. We've had a recent history of our state government has failed in recent years to maintain the water quality in other parts of the state, specifically Kewaunee County, which is just east of Green Bay, and the Central Sands area in central Wisconsin. And the same state government has put in some laws and administrative codes that takes away some of the local control and would tie the hands of the DNR when it came to protecting our abundant supply of clean water. But we do have some solutions. Several other counties around the state are facing this same crisis. We are not alone. And they have offered to help us and to give us advice, their assistance in helping to face this water crisis here in St. Croix County. We can take the same or similar steps that they have taken to protect their clean drinking water, lakes, streams, and rivers. And many of these folks have reached out to us already. And I forwarded a lot of this information to our County Board Chair, Roger Larson, and Dave Vosness. And I believe many of you, if not all of you, got an email from Mary Doherty in Bayfield County within the last couple days. But I'm here tonight not just asking for help for myself, but for the 90 other families that live within a 2-mile radius of that dairy. And that doesn't count the town of Emerald that lives that is just outside the 2-mile radius. 90 families. Over the past 2 years, I've watched this board take action when our state government had previously let us down. For instance, you found a way to fund an assistant district attorney when the heroin problem in Hudson was raging out of control. You had the fortitude to fund our 911 radio systems, and I haven't seen a significant upgrade in over 30 years. You saw the state's failures to adequately fund our county nursing home with medical assistance dollars, and you had the moral courage to finish the job. And you stepped up and devised a fiscally responsible way to keep our Ag Center in Baldwin through a renegotiated lease with the feds, who share that building with us. Our county's motto, as you see on the plaque behind you, innovation through cooperation. You've exhibited that in the past, time and time again, these past couple of years, and I'm very proud of what you guys have accomplished thus far. You found a way, somehow, some way, to protect your constituents from short-sighted policies, and you actually didn't just plan for the next election, you actually planned for the next generation. And I'm very proud of you guys for that. So I'm asking you again tonight, one more time, to step up to the plate. Clean drinking water is a very basic necessity of life. As my pastor used to tell me, don't sacrifice the permanent on the altar of the immediate. Don't sacrifice the permanent on the altar of the immediate. Our need for clean, abundant drinking water is a permanent need and should not be sacrificed for anyone's short-term needs. Our children and our grandchildren, our livestock, our pets, as well as ourselves and the wildlife, are looking to you right now for your assistance. Please help keep Emerald's quality of life viable with access to clean drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Have Virginia Drath like to speak?
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak on CAFOs. My name is Virginia Drath. I'm a resident of Emerald Township and live 1.5 miles from Emerald Sky Dairy. As a retired dairy farmer, I would like to address the likely impact on the value of my home and land and the value of the homes, family farms, and properties of other residents. I have given each of you a copy of what I'm making reference to. It was done a few years ago and refers to data from USDA, EPA, as well as FDA. The Greenfield advisors do economic market and valuation analysis and are best known for appraising properties with negative environmental impacts, which include CAFOs. Exposure to ammonia and methane levels as low as 5 parts per million have been reported to be linked to accelerated neural behavior function deterioration, and at higher levels, it can produce rhinitis, cough, dyspnea, bronchitis, and possibly pulmonary edema. The elderly and the young are especially vulnerable. Studies have shown adverse health effects by residents who live within 3 miles of a CAFO. CAFOs are recognized to impact the surrounding environment in several key ways: air quality and odors, particulate matter, greenhouse gas, insects which often carry parasites, groundwater and contamination of ditches, streams, rivers, and lakes. As a result of recent studies, some states have enacted severe restrictions issuing permits as to the number of animals allowed. Oklahoma has a moratorium on new livestock permits, and Kansas enacted a moratorium on permits and is considering to end CAFOs. South Carolina and Minnesota have mandated elimination of both atmospheric emissions of ammonia as well as odor beyond the boundary of an existing CAFO. This study refers to the stigma communities obtain from having a CAFO, thus affecting property values. Society places a high value on benefits of ownership and the rights to safe water and clean air. Also, the value of being able to sell a property at a value equal to property that isn't being affected by contaminants caused by CAFOs. Recently, the past 2 weeks, people have shared with me about having to put a reverse osmosis filter on their water supply, people turning their water on and getting brown water. A young person went into a creek in Emerald to rescue a pet and was sick for 3 days afterwards. Another person witnessed and took a picture of manure being spread by Emerald Dairy on a field next to his home at 5:30 in the morning, making ruts so deep the manure ran down and into the ditch and possibly into the nearby creek. If that person hadn't been up at that time, would that have been noticed? This isn't what self-monitoring is supposed to be. If the dairy increases to the proposed 8,804 animal units, these problems may significantly increase the severity of the issues we are currently experiencing with our water quality. This isn't just Emerald's problem, it affects the whole county. Let St. Croix County be a model, and I know the word model has been used several times from county officials, for good conservation, excellent water quality, homes and streams that aren't poisoned with contaminants and airborne particulates, family farms and homes that increase in value, not decrease by 6 to 88%. Start with Emerald Township as the model for our county's mission statement of providing services that promote and protect the safety, health, and welfare of its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a Dana Hennessy, and I'm going to remind everybody again that we're limited to 3 minutes. They're getting a little long, so try to hold them to 3 minutes, please.
Hello, my name is Dana Hennessy, and I'm a resident of Emerald Township. I have come to the meeting tonight to first find out if any of the questions that I posed to the public health meeting or the community development meeting, I was told they were good questions. Does somebody have some of the answers to my questions? And if not, at what point will I receive them? I'd like a timeline. The more I look at this information, and Senator Harsdorf's assistant called this evening with some information regarding the DNR is currently looking at a permit for this, I will ask once again that everybody who resides on this board is extremely curious. We only have you to go to for help. I feel it is your responsibility, and at the end, that means accountability, to make sure that each and every one of us has the protection of an innate right of clean water. And that will only happen if you personally go through and look at all of the information pertaining to this. It seems almost as if this is becoming medieval. What, only the rich will be able to have water? Clean, safe water? I'd like you to ponder that thought. People work their whole life, and what they have will have no value at all. Somebody has to account for that thought. This is within your powers. If the attorney that the county has hired says that there is nothing we can do, I'm formally requesting St. Croix County to hire a second opinion. You need to look at the overall threats and possible resource destruction, specifically in our township. The contained animal feeding lots, high grain producing, high capacity wells, and the fact there's a mining operation. I know you have to look at St. Croix County as a whole, but the threat is within our boundaries. And you have to help. Please, there's nowhere else to go. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll address that later. There anybody else that has any public comment at this time? They can step forward if it's on or off the agenda. Is there anybody else that has a public comment? Do you want to? Sure.
Good evening, County Board and St. Croix County residents. I just want to introduce myself real quick. I promise this will be real quick. My name is Donna Berger. I am currently running for St. Croix County District Attorney. I have been a lifelong resident of St. Croix County. My maiden name is Donna Cernahouse, so some of you may know me better as that name. I've been practicing criminal law for over 13 years. I believe in the rule of law, being tough on crime when appropriate. I'm hardworking, I listen well, I can communicate effectively, I work well with others as well. And my ultimate goal, of course, is to protect the safety, health, and welfare of all St. Croix County residents, of course, while being fiscally responsible. And of course, we know how difficult that can be with budgets. Again, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have a public comment at this time? One more time. Does anybody else have a public comment for on or off the agenda items? If not, we will move forward. Thank you. At this time, we'll get into the consent agenda, and we have a couple of amendments on there. Do we want to address those, Supervisor Ring?
So I'll move adoption of the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have a second to that. Supervisor Babbitt seconds it. At this time, it's open for discussion. Is there any discussion on these that are on this consent agenda? There's no discussion from anyone? If I don't hear any discussion, I'm going to put it up for a vote at this time. So evidently, there's no discussion. Get the second. Okay. Supervisor Kiesler? Thank you. And it was, everybody voted, so it's unanimous. That's okay. We need presentations or recognitions. I don't see anything on that. No appointments. An annual department report. U Extension, Ryan Sterry, if he wants to. Sure.
Thank you and good evening. I will try and be brief. We'll see how well that works or not. Most of all, I want to thank our committee and Chair Larson for letting us go a little out of order. Normally we go in October and we realized we had some conflicts with that. So as it turns out, there's a spot open for the July meeting, and thank you for letting us move some schedules around. We greatly appreciate that. So with that, our written report should be in your meeting packets. I will try and not read it word for word, but just a few highlights. As working with UW Extension, We're part of the University of Wisconsin college system, and really we're the outreach branch of that. If you've ever heard of the Wisconsin idea, the boundaries of the university or the boundaries of the state, that's really what Extension's purpose is. We have 4.5 FTEs in our office that are split 40% county, 60% state on the funding. We have one federally funded nutrition educator. Our support staff are graciously provided by the Community Development Department, Ellen. And adding to a little excitement to our summer, we have 2 summer interns that are funded by the county. So it's nice to have young people, and we do work them hard. So our budget information is contained in there. Much of that is contract for service. If anybody has questions on that, let me know. But the way it works for us, we're hired through the state. The county does a contract with the state, and you pay twice a year. So our monthly checks come from the university, but you guys pay twice a year, and that's what that contract for service is. I know we do get questions on that once in a while. So what exactly do we do? We're a smaller department, but we're quite eclectic when you look at the variety of what each of us does. I hate to use this analogy, but we're kind of like a family. We have different personalities. We bicker once in a while, but for the most part, we get along with each other pretty well. So we have Heather Vierling in the 4-H and youth development position. Just some of the highlights of what Heather's worked on. We have around 700 youth in the 4-H program, about 225 certified volunteers, 21 project committees, and 20 clubs in the county 4-H program. One of the newer things Heather's doing is STEM outreach, and that includes both 4-H and non-4-H. She has about 75 kids a month that aren't 4-H members that she reaches out to each month, 5 locations across the county, and her main work with them is STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And one of the exciting things, maybe this will be in next year's report, she just purchased, got funding for 12 robotic units that she's going to start working with the kids on. So you can pair up 2 kids per unit. So we're looking for 20 to 22 kids to really kick that program off. Also, one thing before I forget, one of the highlights, special thing Heather did this year for the state of Wisconsin, she was selected to represent Wisconsin 4-H at Space Camp, which is held at the Space Center in Alabama. She supervised 25 camp counselors and about 225 kids from Wisconsin on that trip. So that was a pretty big undertaking for her. So moving on, community and natural resource development, we have Eric Biltonen. He's been focusing on organizational development, strategic planning, getting much more involved in broadband, and also some economic development work. He works a lot with administration, with other county department heads, working through the strategic planning process and help keeping that going. He's been more involved. He's the chair of the broadband committee for the Economic Development Corporation, again, the broadband part. And he also, not so much on the youth side, but more working with businesses, again, the STEM. That's really the hot topic that I think we're seeing. He's been working with Stout, also talking to some business leaders. How do we prepare the workforce for the jobs that are going to be out there in the next few years? Family living, we have Joanne Sprain. She's been working with CARES, and really her role in that is addressing adverse childhood experiences and how do we help professionals work through that. She also does parenting education with the school districts and also with the inmates in the jail. She's heavily involved in drug court and Smart U. I know that's a project I was talking to her about before she left, financial literacy, and that's really heavily focused at UW River Falls. One of those life skill things that it probably should be a college class, but it isn't. So Joanne stepped in to work on that. Nutrition education, that's our federally funded position. We have Mary Lestrud, also Sarah Johnson. Sarah's based out of the Pierce County office, but we have a sharing agreement between Pierce and St. Croix in that we share Mary, and we get a little Sarah's time in return. Mary and Sarah, they've been added senior meal sites this year for their nutrition education, work a lot with WIC, are at those clinics monthly. They've reached out to WITC and Grace Place to add a couple community programs, and been working a lot with the food pantries. Then we get to ag and horticulture. I'll start with horticulture. That is a vacant position right now, but we've used some salary savings to hire a summer backfill, Andrew Rondo, that's going to be helping us through the summer months, the growing season. He has worked some with small-scale fruit and berry growers, landscape and nursery programs. That was Heidi, his predecessor, did a lot of work in that. And also this whole marketing piece, whether it's social media. They did a event for a bike ride going out to some local farms, just trying to get more awareness for local foods, trying to expand that market. I'm not as entertaining as Mr. Ramberg. I think I saw him earlier before he came in here, but we do have some good stories about trying to teach 50-year-old farmers how to use Facebook and some of those things. And then on the ag side, a little bit of everything. The last couple year or so, really trying to hit harder on this safe animal handling. Work a lot with 4-H kids on that. Starting to reach out more to farmers on that. One of the things I talked to 4-H kids about, we can't vaccinate your steer if you can't handle him, and he probably outweighs you 7 or 8 to 1. So we want it to be good for the animals, but also we want it to be safe for the kids and the farmers that are working with them. Some facility planning, reach into sheep and poultry every once in a while, and as this has been a lower year for some of the commodity prices, doing a lot more one-on-one farm financial, meeting with farm families about that, meeting a lot with farm families. They want to transition to the next generation. We have a son or daughter interested in the farm. How do we make this work? It's not necessarily a big workshop we have, but that's a lot of one time, and as farmers have told me, they only get one chance in their life to do it, so let's do it right. So anyway, those are a few highlights. There's much more in the written report. Just a few other special things to point out. Eric is part of the UW Extension, UW College's Leadership Academy. That's a pretty select group that Eric applied for and was appointed to. So that's a year-long training session, about once a month, that Eric's participating in. Joanne couldn't be here tonight, but she just recently presented at a national summit on collegiate financial wellness, some of the work she's been doing with UW River Falls students. And the last one, this is really more Heather than I, but I got my hands dirty on this too. We just had the regional Area Animal Science Day, which is the judging contest for the 4-H youth. So we had about 300 kids learning how to judge cows, pigs, horses, whatnot. So if you're looking for future fair judges, that's a good program to support. Are there any questions? I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight.
I would just maybe ask you to address the issues related to some changes that may be coming up regarding extension services with respect to budget.
Definitely. And we've been talking about this more and more lately. It's somewhat ambiguous at this point. I can't give a lot of firm answers, but the bottom line is when the University of Wisconsin system received a state budget cut, that trickled down to extension as we're part of the university system. So overall, the state's looking, I can't remember, it's a 3.6 or 3.8 million cut to all of extension across the 72 counties in Wisconsin. So they're grappling right now with how do we actually implement that. So they've issued a call for work groups that are going to look at specific parts of this. But as a county, we're going to have this conversation down the road. Again, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but the analogy I've used is one county board's a lot of work. The university system has decided they got to tackle this in 72 counties with 72 county boards. So it's going to be quite a process to go through.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ryan? None? Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate your report.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
And we'll move forward to our county administrator report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll keep this brief. In your packet, you have the financial report through the end of May 2016, showing expenditures and revenues. We're at 33% of budget in terms of expenditures, and with revenues, we're at, we are let me see here, 37% of budget. So we're right where we should be at this time of year. One question that came up at our last board meeting was regarding the pay for performance line item of $50,000 in the 2016 budget. We had approximately $300,000 in the pay for performance fund. When we adopted the 2016 budget, the bulk of that was used towards implementation of the McGrath wage grid. So we applied everything but $50,000 to implementation of the McGrath study. We discussed this with the admin committee at the time of budget. We retained approximately $50,000, well, actually exactly $50,000 from that fund when we implemented the study, when the board approved it, there was some discussion regarding those employees that have significant lengths of service, years of service in the position, in their current position, that were placed below market, below step 6. In other words, some managers, supervisors with significant years of service were placed below market. And so there was some discussion whether or not there would be an attempt to try to accelerate those positions, those that there are, and there aren't that many, but there are some. Would we advance them quicker to market rather than having to wait every year to move a step? And so those dollars were specified to stay in this fund until such time that the administration committee and the county board decides if we're going to be doing that. Heather Murray, the HR director, is looking into this, and we will have, within the next month or so, we will have a report back to the administration committee whether or not we want to pursue that. But that's why those dollars were reserved, set aside by the board. In case we were to do that, we would have some funds to do it. Other than that, I don't have any other comments on the financial report. As you can see, Scott is not here this evening. Heather Wolski is sitting in his place. We actually have 2 department heads that have had some surgery over the past several weeks. Ellen Denzer and Scott Cox are both recuperating at home at this point after having some surgery. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Both are doing well. I'd also like to take this opportunity to announce that one of our employees with 38 years of service, Kathy Spott, who works in the Corporation Counsel's office, is going to be retiring July 15th. And we are having, the Corporation Counsel's office is hosting a goodbye party for Kathy on Wednesday, July 13th. From 2 to 4 in the county boardroom. And I spoke with Kathy before I came in this evening, and she's asked that I extend that invitation to all the county board supervisors. Kathy's worked with us, with the county, for 38 years. She's worked with 19 different county boards of supervisors, 9 county board chairs, and she even said 7 governors and 6 presidents within the last 38 years. So I think it would be great if we showed our appreciation by stopping by and saying farewell to Kathy, and that's Wednesday, the 13th of July from 2 to 4 in the boardroom. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the financial report? Supervisor Schober.
It's actually not a question on the financial report, but Administrator, are you responding at all to the concerns with this Emerald Dairy? You know, we can only respond on publicly called meetings, but this is your opportunity to let us know what staff might be doing behind the scenes to address the concerns of the citizens, and maybe you could give us a little update on that, because I certainly want to respond to this, what I consider to be an emergency situation here.
Well, I can just, you know, state that I'm following the direction of our corporation council and the committee in terms of what my responsibility is in terms of responding to the citizen concerns that have been raised, and will be doing anything within my ability and power to address the situation. But specifically, I can't state this evening what steps are being taken besides documenting the concerns that have been raised very well, by the way. I don't know if Chairman Ring has any.
Supervisor Ring, do you have something to say?
Well, at the July 16th meeting, we heard many of the questions, and as many of you know, we have developed a frequently asked questions regarding this specific application and some more generals. So what we committed to, and I did not check the website, is to update that list with the questions that were raised. So some of those answers take some research, and that is being done. I don't have a date, but you asked for a date. I think we can get a date. To me, that's something that's going to be updated on whenever we have a new question. So that's going to, and then so what we committed to is just, it will be on the website. It is on the website. I can check and see when it was last updated. So there will be an update date, and so then you will know what the most recent update is when we answer those questions. And then in addition to Chairman Larson and I have talked, and we just talked with Chris Babbitt, Chair, Dr. Babbitt, who's Chair of Health and Human Services, to meet with Mr. Thompson and with Scott Cox to just look at what our next steps should be.
Supervisor Babbitt?
Yeah, I would just briefly reinforce what Supervisor Ring has said. We had a series of public comments at the most recent HHS board. I met this morning with Department Head Fred Johnson to talk about next steps within HHS. So we're certainly looking at this issue carefully, collecting data as best we can, and looking forward to meeting with Corp Counsel and with the administrator about options. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Oxroff?
Just an FYI, the answers to the questions that were presented at the community development meeting will be answered by July 13th. They will be available at the Emerald Town meeting. I will be getting multiple copies, and they should have the answers to the questions that were asked at the community development meeting. I'm not sure about the other ones, but.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, thank you. We will move forward on our new business. We have a resolution approving a 2016 budget amendment, amending the cap on the drawdown of the $5 million state trust fund loan. And before we do anything on that, it takes a 2/3 vote of this board to approve that. So it takes at least 13 of us, so everybody's aware of that. And I need a motion. Supervisor Schoberg.
I'll make the motion since it was reviewed by the administration committee to pass this resolution.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Supervisor Brinkman. And I'd like to turn this, if I could, back to Supervisor Schoberg. Would you like to explain why we're doing this so that everybody's aware?
Right. If some of you might have reviewed the last administration committee meeting, but at that time, we had a very thorough review of the reason for this request for a budget increase item. As it turned out, when the bids came in for the work that needed to be performed, and you get down to the nitty-gritty of what actually has to be done and the requirements to do things in a safe and up-to-code manner, and on something that really wasn't fully understood until you actually start getting to work and getting those bids. We had a presentation by the lead architect for the design, And at least from the administration committee's point of view, we all voted in favor of course, bringing it to this board, but we thought the rationale for the increase was very justified and not unreasonable. And if you all recall, we had up to a $5 million fund available, and we decided to cut it off at a certain dollar amount and to that way not automatically borrow what we might not need. But we do have a cushion with the amount that we borrowed, and I think we're within that, 120-day time period to adjust the request. So I guess we fine-tuned the request, I'll put it that way, even though the increase seems quite large compared to what we initially expected it to be. At least we were satisfied there was a good plausible explanation for everything. I know that the lead architect is here for a further explanation if anybody would care to. But again, we pretty much vetted the situation at Administration Committee. If any other Administrative Committee member wants to speak, or David.
Supervisor Peterson.
I guess I have trouble understanding how apparently the architect that was involved was with the original jail project, and how we can go, if my math is right, into a 40% overrun on this estimate. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Supervisor Nelson.
I believe it would do us well to let the architect explain what happened, because this is unheard of, but that's just how the economy is going right now, and it was a surprise and was an interesting presentation. I think it should do the board well if he's here to speak on what exactly happened.
Supervisor Coulter, you had something to say too?
Yeah, I just noticed that some of the design fees went down, and I was wondering if the architect made a concession there due to their error in estimating what this was going to cost, but it's basically doubled.
Do you want to bring the architect forward, speak to this?
My name is Mark Legatus. I'm with BWBR Architects in St. Paul, and we were hired by the county to design the remodeling of the day report office in the location of the former Huber Center visitation area. I want to correct one small misconception, Supervisor. We were not involved in the design of the original jail. We were working on the plans from the original jail, but we were not involved in the original jail design. The project started back in 2015 when the Sheriff's Department asked us to do a concept level plan for turning the existing visitation area that's underutilized right now into a day report office and for attorney-client visitation area. We ran through several scenarios and came up with a scenario that worked well for the county, but it did require major remodeling of about 700 square feet in that existing visitation area. At the time of the concept design, we did an architectural plan review, and we did an estimate of systems that were going to be utilized in that remodeling, and provided the Sheriff's Department with an estimate of the construction cost along with some soft costs to include design fees, owner's contingency, furniture, fixtures, and equipment budget, and a telecommunications budget. When we began to work on the construction documents, we got into a lot more detail than we had in the concept design. And the discrepancies in the cost came into, I've kind of labeled them as 6 major categories. The first category was the scope of security. And when we did the original concept design, we considered the scope, the security level of the existing visitation area to be the level of security we should provide in this new area. As we worked through it with the Sheriff's Department and with the Department of Corrections, we learned that the level of security in that area was not as high as it should have been for that in today's standards for correctional design. Specifically, there's large areas of window in the visitation booths that form the secure perimeter of the jail. Those windows could conceivably be broken out and allow an inmate to exit the jail. It would be very difficult to do because it's attack-resistant glass, but they are large openings that could conceivably be penetrated. So we were going to reuse those windows as part of the new secure perimeter wall. And again, consistent with the original design, and then talking to the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Corrections, we determined that that was not an adequate level of security, and we had to add considerable security doors, frames, and hardware in the new design, and that resulted in a lot of additional cost. The other security factors, there are 2 cameras in the area now. We were just planning on relocating those cameras. The Sheriff's Department really would like to see more cameras in that area to provide a higher level of security, and so that added to it as well. The second category was mechanical, electrical, and security scope changes, and we were pretty close in our estimate on the electrical, but the mechanical was considerably more complicated than we had anticipated. We really were thinking that it was an area that was being repurposed, so it's just the terminal devices that would have to be relocated. As we got into the design, there was a lot more of the branch ductwork and electrical circuiting that needed to be redone to a higher level than we had anticipated in the concept level design. The third item, there was a couple of items. There was one item specifically that seemed unusually high, and if this resolution is approved, we will work with the contractor to review his costs for the project. But they had a cost in for fluid applied flooring in the restroom at $156 a square foot, which is way higher than we would anticipate it to be. So we believe that they may have misinterpreted the scope of that work, and that cost hopefully can come down. But that was a $10,000 item for a floor in a bathroom, which seemed a little high. Inflation is something that comes into play here as well. This was estimated in May of 2015. And at that point, we did not include inflation in our estimate, not knowing exactly when the project would go ahead. When the Sheriff's Department requested the funds from the county board to do the project, we should have advised them to add some cost for inflation, $8,000 or $9,000 over the year of time from when our estimate was completed to when the project was bid, and we failed to let them know that they should have asked for additional dollars, so that contributed to the cost overrun as well. There were a few items in the estimate that were not, that we did not fully include the proper scope. One was the demolition of existing floors, and again, that had to do with where the security wall was located. We knew we had to do some demolition to relocate a toilet, but we didn't fully anticipate where the new security wall would have to be, which required more floor removal and more floor reinforcing. And then that in turn was more concrete patching. And security sealants, again, to do with the security level, there's a lot of security sealants that now have to be used in the facility, and that amounts to almost $5,000 worth of security sealant because it's within the secure perimeter. Again, it's a level of security that's a little bit higher than the one that was constructed with the original jail, but it's something that the Sheriff's Department and the DOC feel is critical to the safety. And finally, the last thing I would say is just the cost per square foot. We did the estimate based on a takeoff of systems that we thought was in it, and normally at a concept design level, you know, we'll kind of do a square foot cost based on historical data. In this case, it was a small enough project that we did takeoffs for concrete removal, for new walls, doors, frames, things like that, and came in with an estimate. And then we double checked it with cost per square foot, and that estimate was coming in the $210,000, $212,000, or $210 or $212 per square foot cost, which is reasonable for a remodeling that is partially within the secure perimeter of the jail and partially outside of the secure perimeter of the jail. The actual construction cost came in at $374 a square foot, which is approaching the numbers that we see for all new construction corrections. We don't have the footings, foundations, the level of plumbing, lighting, new systems, and so the cost per square foot is very high. What that's telling us is that contractors are busy, and they are going to get paid a reasonable amount of money to do a small project that doesn't have a lot of long-term work for them. So I think we're seeing those costs per square foot on this particular remodeling be very high. On the positive side, all three contractors that bid the project bid it very closely. They were all within $11,000 of each other, so it is what's happening in the industry. The masonry costs for walls were twice what we'd have normally seen in masonry walls, for example, and there's a lot of masonry walls in here. So, so the cost per square foot was an eye-opener to us, because it just it's a number that we haven't really seen in remodeling construction in the past. So that's kind of where we see the major discrepancies that came in. We did not entirely anticipate the scope of the security, and again, the cost per square foot is much higher than we would normally see for this type of remodel. Okay. Is there any other questions I can answer?
Thank you, Dewey. Supervisor Ring.
Thanks. Thanks, I think that was a very, very good explanation. Is there any contingency included? I mean, once you open those walls, things often, are there maybe surprises? Is there contingency in the budget?
Yeah, we do include some project contingency. We included a construction contingency and a project contingency, which is we consider the owner's contingency. Right now, that's sitting at about $13,400 of contingency dollars. And as I mentioned, there is some other money that's built into the overall budget. One of the, we've got some money in there for fixtures, furnishings, and equipment so that they can furnish it with the equipment that they need, and some for telecom as well. It's about $10,000 that we have built into the budget for FF&E, and about $1,300 for telecom, and that's just the computers and phones that need to go in there. So.
Any other questions? Supervisor Berkey?
Just a comment and then a question. With respect to the bathroom floor costing approximately $10,000, I would think that there are alternative materials that could be used, because that is excessive. I think it's unfair to ask that we spend that amount of money there when we have other budgetary concerns in the county, including our university extension and other budgets. So I would appreciate you looking at that more closely with the sheriff.
We're convinced that that's an error in the either they didn't understand the material, which I don't think is the case, because they've done that material here. I think they just misunderstood the scope of the work. I think that they thought they were doing the walls as well, and they don't need to do that. So we will get that number down to where it needs to be.
Okay, Supervisor Halter?
Yeah, this may not be a question for you, but I understand this area is being repurposed. It used to be used for a different purpose, and now it's going to be used for client, attorney conferences. Is that right? It's not Huber.
Yeah, it was actually intended to be a visitation area for the jail, and I believe families were intended to visit in that area, and it just happened to be that they would come into the Huber lobby instead of having to come into the sheriff's department lobby, and the sheriff can probably answer this better than I can.
Yeah, it's part of the overall plan. We're reconverting part of the old Huber office, since that population is down and has been for a considerable amount of time. And realize the need for the day reporting center. So people will come in and do their testing while they're out on bonds from the court. And there's also probationers that'll come in and use that. But also in that area was a designated attorney visiting area, which was no longer being utilized. And if you ever get a chance, come on down, we'll give you a tour of the jail. But the current area was not conducive to the operations as they've expanded in the jail in the last few years. So although we will continue to have attorney-client contact visits in the main part of the jail, we're converting that visiting area to have that non-contact visit area to make it a little easier for the attorneys to get in and out more quickly and to see their clients, and then it's a little less disruption with bringing inmates through the main part of the jail to see their clients as well.
The other aspect of the design is that the attorney-client visitation area are all individual rooms so that the attorney-client conversation, the privileged conversations can be controlled better. Right now, they were all in a large room and it was difficult to control those conversations in that type of an environment.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Long.
Have we or should we be considering other alternatives and looking at the at the project as a whole, that other changes in the project that we might be able to bring it back closer to the original budget? Has any kind of a review been done to see where we might be able to reduce some other costs?
That's a very fair question, and in fact, in a typical project, we would adjust the budget in one of two ways. Either you reduce the quality of the construction or you reduce the scope of the construction. This is a 700 square foot area that when we did the concept design, I think we went through 4 different options with the Sheriff's Department, and this is the only one that worked. It was just, that's the only way you could get an office of a reasonable size and get those attorney-client visitation areas in there. If there was a way to reduce the scope of the work, we would certainly approach it that way and bring it as close to budget as we could. We would also look at the quality of materials, but again, a lot of that is driven by Department of Corrections and the need to have a safe and secure facility and maintain the separation between the secure and non-secure side. If I thought that there was any way we could get closer to that budget by reducing either the scope or the quality, we would have come in with an alternative to do this, because the last thing we want to do is come and ask somebody to pony up more money for a project that they thought they had paid for. That's never a good approach for us or for you. But given what the needs of the Sheriff's Department are and the limited space available, we just don't see an alternative to the scope that's there now and provide a functional space for the Sheriff's Department to use in the years to come.
Supervisor Peterson.
I guess I'd ask the administrator, what's the possibility of tapping some of the department budgets that are involved in this to help out with this overrun?
Are you talking about the Sheriff's Department budgets? Or others? I don't know if that would be an approach I would recommend. I think we have we were approved for the $5 million state trust fund loan, and we put a cap on it of 3.7. We as a board, or you as a board, and I concurred with the recommendation to cap the borrowing, cap the use of the state trust fund loan at 3.7 and some change. This project came in overbid when the bids were estimated, as Mark had said. That was in May of 2015, and some things have changed and the bids came in higher. I think it makes good sense to utilize that bonding or that borrowing capacity that was approved by the state. And working with the finance department, we're going to be working real aggressively to get this state trust fund loan paid off on a pretty aggressive repayment schedule. So I think it makes good sense to adopt the resolution as presented, which will amend the drawdown from 3.7 to 3.8, $3,824,000, rather than going back in and trying to cut the sheriff's budget or other departmental budgets at this point, mid-year. If there's residual funds in any of those department budgets at the end of the year, those funds revert back to the general fund. And so, that's our goal, to have some dollars left at the end of the year, but I wouldn't recommend doing that now, Dave.
Supervisor Long?
I just have a real quick curiosity question. When these projects are considered, do we do a cost-benefit analysis? And if that kind of analysis was done, how would this kind of a cost increase impact that analysis and the merit of the project overall?
I don't know if the sheriff wants to speak to that. I mean, we've been looking at the entire criminal justice system through the CJCC, and this was one of the projects that came forward as a recommendation from the sheriff's office, and it fits within the overall structure of our criminal justice system to try to provide a facility where those individuals that have been ordered by the court to present themselves and to provide proof of their sobriety or their cleanliness or what have you, that we have a facility to do that rather than bringing these people into a secure facility, into the middle of the jail where a lot of this activity was taking place before. Now they can come into a secure part of the jail, but they won't be going through the jail. It will take less of our corrections officers' time to be dealing with these. So I don't know if we did a cost-benefit analysis, but the CJCC has looked at this and has recommended that it's a piece of the puzzle that has been missing in our system. I don't know, Sheriff, do you want to weigh in on?
Sure. And I think Administrator Thompson has talked about the project very accurately. This wasn't something that just came from my office. This was part of that big picture, CJCC, with all of the entities from the criminal justice system sitting around the table. And one of the things that we realized that we weren't doing very well was monitoring individuals who were out on bail or bond. To be perfectly honest with you, there was just a fraction of a percent that were actually getting checked. It was those people that the judges said, you must go to the jail every, pick a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, and you're gonna have to pass a drug screening test or an alcohol test. The rest, which amounted to about, at any one given time, about 2,700 or 2,800 people, were not getting checked on. So we had a systemic failure, and how do we fix that? So, we looked at all sorts of different models, and what the group came up with that seemed to fit everybody's need the best was a day reporting center. And again, it's that small area that Mark talked about. We're converting about 700 square feet, give or take. So we did, come up with project costs to include deputies' times to staff these the centers. We looked at checking juveniles, all sorts of different hours of operation. And if you look at our jail right now, when the folks come in now for testing, they go right into the booking area of the jail. And because jail regulations are such that while we're doing the testing, we have to close down the booking operations. So it basically brings the jail to a halt, screeching halt. So we try and limit then when people can come in for their testing. It's hard on them. With this, if you're working nights, weekends, we can encourage you to keep your job, come in, show us that you're compliant. We'll report that back to the courts. We're looking for those self-correctors, but at the same time, there's always that thought in the back of their mind, if you're out on bond, that, hey, I do have to get tested. It's all random. I don't know when my test comes up. We also partnered with state probation and parole, where they will actually pay us to test their clients, which they haven't done in the past. So we're looking for some revenues there as well. And by us testing the clients that are of a lower risk, probation parole can now focus their time on the higher risk clients and hopefully have more of an effect on them. Does that make sense? And then, if I could, Supervisor Peterson, on the jail assessment funds, or you asked about each agency contributing, there is part of the plan where $50,000 from the jail assessment fund comes right out of that fund and goes right into repaying for this until it's paid for.
Supervisor Ring?
I have a question, I think, for the architect. We've run into this before where we have a cost estimate and then it comes in a little bit higher. I think we as a board have to take some responsibility for that because there's a risk assessment that we have to, or the staff has to present to us, because we can have at a conceptual level, a preliminary design level, and a final design level, the cost estimates would get closer, correct? And we made the decision at the cost estimate for the conceptual level where we have less detail. We didn't go, and there would have been a design cost to get a more detailed cost estimate, correct? I mean, I think we're going to see this. Do you have advice for us?
Yes, in this, the responsibility falls squarely on us. This is a very small project. It's 700 square feet, and at the size of this project, you don't really go through all the stages of development that you would for a larger project. If you were doing another jail or an expansion to your county office building or something like that, then that approach certainly makes sense. You'd start at a conceptual level, then you'd check the costs at a schematic design level, and then you'd develop further and you'd develop the costs again, and in each stage you'd be able to adjust those costs. This is such a small project and it was so confined. And part of the difficulty we had was that it was so small and it was so clearly defined of what the plan was going to be that we thought we had a very, very reasonable estimate at the time that we put that estimate together. Again, once you get into it, even a 700 square foot project can get very, very complex. And again, increasing the security level over what was actually there right now was a big contributor to that. But no, in a project this size, we wouldn't have recommended coming to the board with an intermediate cost estimate because it was small enough and closely enough defined that we should have gotten closer than we did. And just as an aside, we did the master control remodeling, which was about a year ago, central control, and our estimates were right on there, and it was, we knew the higher level of security there. We anticipated that. We had some discussions with the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Corrections, so those estimates came in really well, but this was an area that was partially inside the secure perimeter, partially outside. It was very small and very contained. And we just did not anticipate the level of security or the scope of security that was needed in this particular area.
Are there any other questions? Supervisor Nelson?
So as far as the timeline, did we agree to a budget, then the Department of Corrections came in and did their magic and our budget went up through the roof? So basically we were kind of backwards. We should have had Department of Corrections done, then come out with the budget of what it was going to be. Because I think usually in business, if you do maybe a 10% run over, it's kind of forgivable. 10% under, that's good. But if we did a budget, then the DOC come in afterwards, ooh, that's rough.
The department, go ahead.
The Department of Corrections, the way it works is we do the design and we get the drawings and we approve it to what we think looks best, and then we send it to the Department of Corrections and they either stamp it or say you need to adjust this or adjust that. So it's a simultaneous process. It really isn't one or the other.
We did have the Department of Corrections come in very early in the detailed design phase. We did not involve them in the concept design phase, and in retrospect, it might have made sense, except we weren't to that level of detail in the concept design. Typically, what we try to do is build in enough contingencies in the concept design phase that we can kind of compensate for some of the things that we don't know about the project at that level. And again, we thought we knew more about it than we did. So it wasn't really corrections that drove it as much as when we really got into the detail and started talking through. And I guess I would say another thing that we did walk through with the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Corrections is how do you, when you get into the nitty-gritty of how you construct it, where do you build temporary partitions, and how do we have to actually build it so we can maintain the secure perimeter, and then make it easy for the contractors to build. And it's actually a very simple phasing plan. It's just that cost a little bit more money to get there than we had anticipated. And again, we just did not fully anticipate that, the level of complexity of the project because of the small size. And the fact that, I mean, if you look at the plan layout from and the reflected ceiling plans from the original concept design, they haven't changed. I mean, they were right on where the concept design was. It was, the devil was in the details in this one.
Supervisor Hanson?
I agree with Supervisor Ring that we bear some responsibility here. But I would add to that we need to, after this meeting, analyze our process, how we manage our contracting, because it's evident to me, it seems to me that we perhaps didn't, as policymakers, watch this process closely enough, perhaps. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on my colleagues here, not trying to throw any mud. It's just, having been through the process of building a project once, I can see maybe where things might have been done differently. So I think after this, there's some lessons to be made, not tonight, because let's just get this done. I think we have an obligation to our most excellent sheriff's department and our most excellent jailer, who I feel an obligation to support. Let's get this done. Let's just pass this and take care of this job.
Supervisor Burgum?
I do have a process question, just regarding, and I agree with Supervisor Hanson about supporting the Sheriff's Department on this project very much. But I do have a question about why we don't ask for line item bids.
The actual bid is a line item bid.
I thought I read that it was not, so maybe I misunderstood.
No, we actually got the line item bid from the contractor, so we understand where all the money came from. In fact, we did an analysis of our concept design bid versus the contractor's line item bid. And that's why, for example, I know that the masonry was about twice as high as we'd normally expect to see it. And it's not that it's not a complicated masonry job, but we've been estimating these for a lot of years, and we pretty much know the cost per square foot, and it was about double of that. So.
Okay.
So maybe we don't know it as well as we thought we did in some areas.
Supervisor Coulter?
Yeah, this is probably a question for the sheriff, but Sheriff, do I understand that we have to do this in order to get the reimbursement from the state for the probation services that we provide them?
No, it's part of the agreement is part of the day reporting center. We were looking for potential revenues to help offset the costs of operating this day report center, and then Probation Crol, who sit at the table with us during our CJCC meeting, said that they have a need as well, and if we build this, kind of the old, if you build it, they'll come concept, they said if you folks build this, we will help you revenue, we will send our low-risk offenders to you, please, we'll pay you to test them as a revenue source. And so if we don't build it, they'll just have to continue to test their clients the way they do now. We're not necessarily out anything, but we haven't signed a contract with them yet.
Well, you're out that revenue stream, so.
Right. Well, we're not yet, right.
Is there any idea how much that would be?
Either. Off the top of my head, I apologize.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I think I'll call the question and we'll vote on this subject. Just to remember, it takes a 2/3 vote to pass it, so. All yeses but one, so one no. So it passes. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to our next resolution here is to support Just Fix It for statewide road maintenance. Supervisor Peavy?
Yeah, I'll move adoption.
Okay, do I have a second? Supervisor Hanson seconds it. And would you like to address that?
I have Supervisor Asmus address it. He's been instrumental in developing it, so.
Okay.
And I'll go one step farther as long as I see the commissioner back there, Tim. As you're coming up, you and I both at road school in June heard some disappointing news that came out. Secretary Gottlieb, the Transportation Secretary, addressed us there. We've been talking about it to the last 2 or 3 months at the Board of Directors too, and so I think you could probably give us some better information than I could.
Okay, thank you. I will just highlight the resolution itself a bit here. Part of the issue that's been going on for quite a number of years started with line number 42, Transportation Finance and Policy Commission, which was assigned by the governor to look into the issue of transportation funding in Wisconsin. They came up with a whole host of ideas and options and revenue sources and whatnot. And that commission was made up of private and public firms. TDA was the one in mind, Craig Thompson Transportation Development Association, which we are a member that also has public and private partners in it. And they're the ones that are really moving forward with Just Fix It campaign, just like, and it's named after Just Do It, those commercials from Just Do It, short, quick, and to the point. So the other part on there is line number 30. Don't want to mix up that acronym with our TRIP, Town Road Improvement Program. This TRIP is the Road Improvement Program. That is an acronym for another nonprofit national transportation research firm. And then, so the bottom line with this is to continue to move forward with asking the governor and the legislature to move forward with what has been laid the foundation by the counties in the past. And that was some time ago when we had a referendum to protect the transportation fund. I don't know if you all remember that. And that laid the foundation for this. And this is the next step on moving forward with that. And what we did at the Transportation Committee was ask that it be stressed that both state and local funds are addressed in this. And I hope that was addressed adequately enough in here, but I noticed that on line 35 and also on line 44. The governor instructed Secretary Gottlieb to move forward with a budget that, I forget, help me Supervisor Osnes on the specifics of it, but to focus more on maintenance and not so much on construction. And if you see what's going on in Wisconsin, in St. Croix County, we have 5 bridges worked on right now on I-94, which are 50 years old. And one of the other items is we keep adding jewelry to our system. And I talk jewelry, you got the signing, and you have all the connected vehicles. You have all of these added issues that we have with all the cell phones and whatnot without any additional sources of funding for it. But the bottom line then on that is we have increased activity without increased revenue sources. And most revenue sources move up and down with the activity, but not so much with fuel tax. And then if you remember on one of the lines here, 38 through 40, we showed that Wisconsin is significantly less in, if you take a vehicle, a car, with the registration fee plus the gas tax that you pay on 12,000 miles a year or 15,000 miles a year, whichever year it was. In 2006, it was $102 less that Wisconsin motorists paid on that vehicle. I think it was a Ford Taurus. And then in 2010 or 11, it's $132 or 120 some. So the difference is there, that the options are there to be considered, and this resolution encourages that. So that's the bottom line of us talking back and forth, going to the Wisconsin County Highway Association meetings. Dave and I are on the executive committee for that, so we hear this several times. So I hope that suffices for the reasoning behind some of the background and some of the terminology in it.
Are there any questions? Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, U.S. Treasury, the 10-year yield just hit the lowest level ever today, below 1.4%. That's not because business is good and looking bright. And I'm not going to encourage anybody to raise taxes or fees on any of the taxpayers in my district because they're already going to get nicked on their property taxes, which was the single highest complaint I heard when I was campaigning door to door. So I can't support this.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Osnes?
Supervisor Coulter, one of the things that when we've gone down to Madison, everybody that we've banged on the door, they all agree that we need to do something. And the association has stepped up to the plate along with TDA, and we said, would you be willing to come to the table with us? And we'll help you find some solutions to funding. And we have yet to have them do that. They understand there's a problem, but they don't want to step up to the plate and just fix it. Let's just get it done. We'll find a way to do it. We'll help you do it. Please come to the table and help us.
Any other questions? Supervisor Babbitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, in the process of learning about the town of St. Joseph, which was really where, if you will, I cut my teeth politically here, was in working with that township and getting to know the town board chair. I've seen, at least at the town level, the struggle that goes on every day just to try to maintain roads, not to mention replace them or do other significant work on them. And I know that if those issues are happening at the town level, at least in St. Joe's, where trying to plow the roads and maintain the roads has become almost an undoable project because of lack of funding. We do need to find some way to fund significant transportation changes. I'm very impressed that all the bridges are being repaired right now. I drive down to Baldwin almost every day on I-94 and see all that work there, and that looks pretty good to me because there's no question that locally as well as nationally, roads and bridges and infrastructure are falling to pieces. So I support the motion, even if all to some extent we're doing is pushing and making sure the state understands that we're serious about this and that they need to find a long-term funding mechanism to make this stuff happen.
Thank you. Supervisor Ring?
So one of the things that you mentioned was there are now lots of new options. I mean, this has been an issue for a long time. Every town boards association, every state meeting, every county association meeting we go to, we talk about it. You talked about some new innovative ideas. I mean, is that, they're not articulated here. I mean, what are they?
On their website, not only the TDA, Transportation Development Association website, along with Transportation Finance and Policy Commission has a whole host of them. And there's probably more than I can recall, but I have my favorite, but I dare not share what they are. I don't, there's a whole host from vehicle miles traveled, where you fill up at the gas and they know how many miles you travel in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and take care of that accordingly. There's a Big Brother issue with that. There's the registration fee itself. There's the fuel tax fee. There's charging the oil companies at a terminal. There's I believe the sales tax issue. There's a whole host of them that they have out there, and if you refer to that website, I believe it'd be more comprehensive. And Craig Thompson at the TDA and a few of those private engineering firms who were on that commission could probably recite them quite well.
Thank you. Supervisor Long?
Do some of those options then include methods of raising funds without increasing taxes?
The user fee portion of the fees, the registration fee, I think one is tolls. You know, there's a whole host of them out there. They're not saying good or bad, they're just showing where they are, what other states are doing, and what options are out there. And of course, they're also looking at reducing expenses, which I get a kick out of, pardon me, Supervisor Osnes. The one that we've been going to DC with every year as part of the association is moving forward with streamlining the process of delivering projects. If we have a project out in New York, why are we paving a road in St. Croix County for the same process, which is 35 to 45% of the cost? We can do it for 10 to 15%. So what we're asking is for the feds to give us 3 layers of paperwork, and we're getting some legs on that. We have to start at the higher level to bring it to Wisconsin, to bring it to us. Because when I apply for federal funds, We literally have a stack of federal paperwork like this, and ours is maybe 1/4 of it. And one of the fellows out of Florida shared it on a, I took a picture of it with my cell phone. I'd like to share that. But that is, you reduce expenses, you increase revenues, and you change the size of the box. My box is doing our jurisdictional transfers, giving the road to the entity that's closest to their heart so they can deal with their citizens at the most expedited and reasonable manner, rather than giving it to the state or giving it to the county. And they don't need to call for a permit on a Sunday, they can just do it. Like let's say a sewer or something goes out. City should be able to take on that without calling us. So it's all three, and this is one of the pieces that the commission has been dealing with and fighting over because it's a tough one. And all 72 counties have been asked this question to consider this resolution by Wisconsin Counties Association.
Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? It's time to vote on this then. We have a motion and a second on it. We have one no and the rest are yes, so it passes. Thank you, everyone. And at this time, I'm looking for requests for further agenda items. If anybody has anything for future agendas. If not, you can get a hold of Amy or Cindy, myself, Pat, so. And we have a report from the clerk's office. Nothing there. Any announcements from anybody? Supervisor Nelson.
At the end of July, River Falls, the baseball group is hosting, I believe it's the Class AA State Legion baseball tournament. So when you say build it, they will come. Well, they're coming, all right. And I said at one of our first county board meetings, I said they're going to get a lot of good events there. They're actually holding the St. Croix Valley Baseball League All-Star Game. I think they worked that the other night. And they're going to also have their state tournaments there. So when you invest into your community, you get returns on your investments. So that's just anything that we're talking about, and I'll say that's a very great thing that River Falls is doing. I congratulate them.
Okay, we have another one. Supervisor Peavy.
Yeah, I just wanted to inform the county board that our Supervisor Osnes has been elected now president of the Wisconsin County Highways Association. So, congratulations, Dave. And I believe you 1-year term, so thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Perky.
Just an announcement that the St. Croix County Fair is July 20th through the 24th. And I hope everyone will head on over to Glenwood City to the fairgrounds. And there's a new building that will be used this time, one of the horse buildings, and also an irrigation system that you're responsible for approving. So I think you'll be happy to see. And also there's going to be numbering of all the buildings with respect to having an emergency plan that was recommended by our EES department. The highway department has been helpful in fulfilling, ordering the numbers that go on the buildings, and that'll happen before the county fair begins. So thank you.
Any other announcements? If I don't hear any other announcements, thank you, everyone. The meeting's adjourned.